how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today I've got a couple of knives that are going to be really fun to share with you and talk about, but there's a specific reason that I'm bringing these two knives. So we've got a Cold Steel 4MAX and a Cold Steel AD10. Both of these are Andrew Demko custom designs brought into production by Cold Steel. By the way, I did get this one from DLT Trading Company. Huge thank you to them for shipping this and my AD15 out as quickly as they did, and for continuing to be awesome in terms of their shipping to Canada. They also carry a lot of stuff that I like. So I want to give a little shout out to DLT Trading there as we get into our introduction. Now, the main thing that I want to say before I get into the actual comparison of these two knives is this is going to kick off a bit of a series for me on the channel. I've had just a ton of questions on Instagram and messages on Instagram, messages on the Facebook page and on the YouTube channel, all asking me about these knives as well as the AD15, the Recon 1. And so I've tried to kind of compile all of those, and I'm going to do a series of comparisons, okay? And this is going to be the first one, the AD10 and the 4MAX. But I'll continue to do some more. So if you have follow-up questions that you'd like to have addressed in the subsequent videos, comment with that down below. If you have an opinion about these knives, about the Recon 1, about the AD10, the 4MAX, the SR1, the AD15, how they compare to one another, which one you'd prefer, go ahead and put that down below as well. So this should be a lot of fun because these are all knives that I really like, and clearly just the sheer amount of volume that I've had in terms of questions indicates that Cold Steel has done something pretty spectacular here. So let's finally go ahead and get started. I know that's a longer introduction than usual, but there's a lot of stuff I wanted to get out to you guys. Now, let's get started with size and weight, which, unless you're blind, you can see is pretty different on these two knives. Obviously, the 4MAX is much larger than the AD10, and that's true both of these production versions as well as the customs. I'm going to focus on the production versions that we have here in front of us. If you're interested in Andrew Demko Customs, hey, I get it. They're quite a ways outside of my price range. I think I found an AD10. About the cheapest example I could find was an AD10 for like $975 or $965. But these are expensive knives if you buy the custom, and Cold Steel has made them very accessible, which I think is really awesome. So finally, sorry about that little aside, size and weight here. So we've got 8 3/4 inches on the AD10, and we've got 10 inches on the Cold Steel 4MAX. It is a huge knife. Not only, by the way, in terms of its overall length, I've had knives that are longer, but this knife is just huge in every way. It's heavy, it's hand filling, the blade is massive. Okay, this is a really big knife. So let's continue here. We've got, as I said, 8 3/4 versus 10. We've got a 3 9/16, so just over 3.5 inches of blade here. We've got a 4 1/8 inch blade on the 4MAX. In terms of the handle length here, we've got 6 whole inches here and 5 1/4, really a hair over 5 1/4 on the AD10. Finally, the weight here, 10.5 ounces on the 4MAX and 6.8 ounces on the AD10. Neither of these are lightweight knives, but I will say if you pick up this one and then you pick up this one, you're like, oh man, this is super light. And I will say this, as we compare these two, there's no question which one carries better, which one is more practical in terms of an EDC. That is clearly the AD10, okay? But I have to add a further sort of note here, and that is when you pick up the AD10, if you were gonna guess how much this knife weighs, you would never guess 6.8 ounces. You just wouldn't. It feels extremely light, and I cannot explain that, but I'm pretty sure I'm not the only person who's pointed that out. It's not just my perception. A number of people have said it feels lighter than it should, okay? When you pick up the 4MAX, you know you've got something substantial, okay? Now, so that's the size and weight comparison. They are totally different, and this is a huge knife, and you need you have to make special accommodation to carry this around with you. The AD10, not so much, okay? So that's the main difference between these two knives. And in terms of who's gonna want which one, well, look, if you just find the 4MAX to be the awesomest thing you've ever seen and you don't care how much it weighs, then you're gonna love it. All right, but if you're at all concerned about making this an EDC and about size and weight and carry and how comfortable it's going to be, you definitely want to lean toward the AD10. All right, let's go on to the blade next. So on the AD10, we have S35VN with this really nice hollow grind, nice swedge on top. And I have to say, I really, really like the grinder satin finish on this, especially the multi-direction there. Looks really, really attractive. The other thing I have to say is I love hollow grinds. I've talked about this lots on my channel. The flat grind has sort of taken the day in terms of popularity in the knife community, but I really, really like hollow grinds. I just find the performance you get out of them is superior to a flat grind for slicing type of tasks, and it still gives you all the toughness and durability that you could want. So I just find a hollow grind is a great way to achieve a really tough, durable blade that still cuts really well. Now, having said that, I have to give a lot of credit to the Formax. Obviously, we've got 20 CV steel here, a flat grind, stonewash finish, and really the only area that I wish was different, the one area that really stands out to me, see if you can guess. I love satin finished blades. And so the fact that they went with a stonewash here, it's not the end of the world. It's not a deal breaker at all for me, but I so wish this was a satin finish. I really do. Okay, now in terms of actual cutting performance, these are so close you would not believe it. Okay, and that is a testament to how well ground the Formax really is. This is a crazy big, tough blade, but it's fairly thin behind the edge. And I purposely prepared a whole meal in preparation for this video, okay? And I cut all the onions, tomatoes, everything I was doing, I cut with these two knives. And yes, you could notice a difference in the slicing power of the AD10. That hollow grind is so thin, it just is like a laser beam. But, okay, the Formax did so well. And I've said this more over and over again about the Formax. It cuts like a dream, and it absolutely does. There's no doubt about it. So in terms of performance on these blades, there's a slight difference. Yes, you can notice that this one moves through material just a hair easier, but the Formax is so good for such a big, thick, heavy blade in 20 CV steel that I actually have to give the win in this category to the Formax. And it's because they've made such a big, tough, heavy-duty blade, but they've made it slice so well. Okay, the AD10 is no slouch. I still love it. But just by a hair, I've got to take 20 CV over S35VN. Okay, now what about the lock on these two? Well, you can see it's the same lock. They're both triad locks, and guess what? They are both as smooth as silk. And this is one area where I really expected this to be a big difference. All right, and I've talked about the Formax before in lots of different videos. Of all the cold steels I've ever had, the Formax is the nicest lock. It's smooth, it's not difficult. The complaint that people often make about the triad lock being difficult, this knife does not live up to it at all. It's just really, really nice. And so I kind of thought, especially because of the price point on this knife, I kind of had sort of said to myself, look, for over $300, that's what you get. You get that kind of smoothness, that kind of precision. No regular production cold steel is going to do that, but the AD10 absolutely does. Look at this. It is drop shut. Fantastic. Look how good that is. It is every bit as good as the Formax in terms of how smooth and how comfortable it is. And that seems to be the consensus across the board. I tried to go out there and see, maybe I got a special one that's just perfect and every other AD10 is really bad and really difficult. But I've checked around and it seems that they're all that way. Just really, really smooth, really well done. So I'm going to call this a tie in terms of, how the lock performs. I will say the slightly heavier components on the Formax are probably going to make this knife a little stronger, but look, guys, you've seen the cold steel videos. You know the triad lock is stupidly strong. And, do you need to carry 900 pounds instead of 800 pounds? Highly unlikely. Okay, so that's the qualifier I'll give there. Otherwise, these guys are going to be a tie, and they are both the best expressions of the triad lock that I have seen. Really, really nice. All right, what about handle construction and ergonomics? Here we're going to see some slightly more important differences. Okay, so there is the 80, the 4MAX. I don't know why I keep wanting to call this the 8015, but the 4MAX. Look at the size, for example, of the stop pin, of the lock bar. Everything is massive. We've got titanium liners here, titanium backspacer, really, really nicely put together and very, very comfortable in hand. This is a confidence-inspiring knife without a doubt. Okay, and so yeah, full points for construction, especially if you're thinking about toughness and durability. Over here, this guy is no slouch either, okay? On the AD10, we've got stainless steel liners instead of titanium, and the price point would dictate that. Now, we do have an aluminum backspacer, and I'm sure that was done to save weight. I haven't taken this apart, so I can't tell you, but I highly suspect, because it's a pretty typical practice for cold steel, that we have steel screws going into aluminum, and I'm not a fan of that. Maybe they'll surprise me here and there will be stainless steel collars that these screws go into, but I kind of doubt it. Now, is that the end of the world? No, it just means you've got to take a little bit of care if you're going to take this knife apart, although it's a backlock and it's on washers, so there's really not the same kind of reason. If you've got a knife that's on bearings, yes, you have a reason to take it apart every so often. This guy, not so much. You can pretty much clean this all you would need to while it's still put together. And so while I would almost never say this, this might be a knife where I would say, you know, maybe you don't want to take this one apart because of the fact that you've got steel going into aluminum, which I'm not a fan of, okay? So that's really about my only complaint. Otherwise, again, both of these are constructed exceptionally well. They're strong, they're heavy duty, they're going to be above and beyond anything you could think of doing with a folding knife, and probably above and beyond most things that you should never think of doing with a folding knife, right? I hate to be cliche here, but these really are as close to a fixed blade as you can get without going to an actual fixed blade. However, let me warn you this. Don't say to yourself, hey, Kevin said this is almost like a fixed blade, so I'm going to use it to baton this, or it's still a folding knife, and you still have to take all the same precautions you would take with a folding knife, okay? So there you go. That's my warning to you. Now, finally, which one of these is more comfortable in hand? This is something I just have got to give to the AD10. This knife, the roundness of it, the feel of it is perfection. This knife is still fantastic. You could work all day with this knife and not have a problem and have no hot spots, but it's just a little more squared off on the edges, and for that reason, the ergonomic points go to the AD10. The toughness points in terms of construction go to the 4MAX, all right? Now, finally, the question on everyone's mind, and really that all of you are going to have to make up your minds for yourselves. You guys love to ask me this question, and I always think to myself, dude, you're going to have to pick. But here's the final question. Which one should I buy? Well, obviously, I have both. I love both. I have no interest in getting rid of either one of these knives, all right? That said, for 99.9% of you who are watching this, the AD10 is absolutely the knife you should buy. The value on this is off the charts. I think they're like $129. Someone correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, compared to about $350. Okay, maybe you can find one of these on the secondary market for $250. Still, all right, for $129, you are getting a fantastic, tough, overbuilt knife that you can carry pretty comfortably all the time, right? For me, the 4MAX is what I call an occasional carry. When the situation suits it, I carry it, but for the vast majority of the time, it's not going to be as carryable or as usable as the AD10. Okay, so there you go. That's my overall take. Now, am I saying I don't like the 4MAX? I'm not saying that at all. I love the 4MAX. And if someone, held a gun to my head and said I had to give one of these up, I would give up the AD10. I really would. But if someone's asking me from a practical standpoint, which one should I buy? Which one would you recommend to people? I've got to go with the AD10. All right. I hope that helps somebody. I hope you found it entertaining. I hope you like these knives as much as I do. These two really, really excite me. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification button so you see all of the subsequent videos that are coming up. I think next in line is going to be the AD10 versus the Recon 1, which will be an equally interesting video. We'll talk to you soon.